Move up or move down in the first round. We're going to take a look at both sides of the equation and try to come up with an answer. Plus, we're going to answer some of your questions in today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast, coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name's Patricia Traina. Happy hump day to everybody. It's Wednesday as we continue to churn our way towards the 2023 NFL draft. And actually, before we get to the draft, on Monday, the Giants report for the start of their off-season conditioning program. So just kind of looking ahead a little bit, there's going to be video conference calls with head coach Brian Daboll and I believe some select players. So that's something to look forward to next week. But until we get there, we've got some stuff to take care of here on the Locked On Giants podcast as we get you ready for the big NFL draft, which is coming up so soon. So on today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to take a look at the first round. And should the Giants trade up or should they trade back? We're going to look at both angles and try to come up with an answer, what might be the best way to go. And then at the end of the program, I'm going to answer a few of the questions that I've received from you guys and gals. So that's what's on today's agenda. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast. Appreciate you. Let's get right into it. All right, let's start off with where the Giants are at. Now, as everybody knows, the Giants have the 25th overall pick in the NFL draft. And usually when a team is drafting that low, you tend to see clusters as far as the grades. In other words, that's where you start to see some guys who maybe some teams might have a second round grade on, or you see guys that just, the clusters of grades are a little closer together. So if you're a team looking to move down, there's an advantage to it if you want. If you're a team looking to move up and you have the draft capital to do it, there's an advantage there. So let's take a look at why it might be advantageous for the Giants to move up in this draft. All right, so the Giants have 10 draft picks, as we all know. And if we go back and we look at what they did in free agency, they addressed the run defense, which they had to do. They added some weapons to the passing game, which they absolutely had to do. What they haven't done yet is they haven't addressed offensive lines, particularly the interior of the line, even though they did sign J.C. Hassenhofer to be a stopgap at center. I think they're going to still look to add a center for the long term there. And the Giants really didn't address cornerback. Now, they did add Amani O, the former Detroit Lions starter, but that's more of a reclamation project, I think, with him, because this is a guy who lost his starting job in Detroit. The Giants are going to see if they can maybe, bring him back, get his confidence back up there, maybe, rejuvenate his career. That being said, folks, when you look at the situation at cornerback that the Giants have, they've got Adoree Jackson, who's entering the final year of his deal, and who I really don't think the team is going to look to extend. I'd be really surprised if they do. And then on the other side, they're going to have Amani compete with Nick McLeod, with Aaron Robinson, with Cordell Flott, amongst others. And, not for nothing, Aaron Robinson, of course, was injured last year, missed most of the season. This was the second year in a row he dealt with injuries. McLeod and Flott, they played okay, but, still have a need there. All right. So I'm not sure exactly why the Giants might think that this year's going to be better. Maybe because, it's the second year in the system. I don't know. But the bottom line, as I see it, is they need an upgrade at cornerback. They need to start thinking about the future. They need to say to themselves, okay, if we're not signing or planning to re-sign Adoree Jackson long-term, then we better start thinking about the future, especially with a deep cornerback class. Now, here's the dilemma if you're the Giants and you're considering moving up. This is a deep cornerback class. You could theoretically sit tight and you can get a good cornerback, probably a future starter at 25. If you want to go in a different direction, maybe go receiver instead and maybe wait until the third round. You could do that as well. But the longer you wait, the more likely there's going to be a run on a particular position. We see it all the time. And, mock drafts, if you put any stock in them, and I really don't, but I know teams do run mock draft scenarios. Sometimes you do see like a run on a specific position. Now, I've done 2 mock drafts so far. I've done one for this show, and then I did one for Giants Country, which ran yesterday. I also was part of the Fan Nation mock draft that we did a couple weeks ago, in which I took a receiver, which I would not do again. So that being said, sometimes you can't be too cute. You can't be too smug and say, oh, okay, you know what? This is a deep cornerback class. I'm going to sit tight. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to get somebody. You can sit and wait, or you can be proactive and get the guy you want. Now, based on some of the mock drafts I have seen, there should be a run on cornerbacks, probably in the teens. So if you're the Giants and you want to get one of these premier cornerbacks, you might want to consider moving up. Now, how high do you want to move up? I made a scenario, or I proposed a scenario at the request of Chris Carter, who is the host of Locked On Steelers. He did a show in which it was basically make me an offer to move up to the Steelers draft spot, which is number 17. And I said, okay, why not? So I took part in it. And basically I offered him pick number 25 and a third round pick to move up to number 17. Probably not enough to move, but he accepted it. All right. And you can check that out, by the way, on Locked On Steelers. Here's my thinking. I think that it is very possible the Giants might be able to get one of the top cornerbacks, the Witherspoons, the Gonzalez's, the Porter Juniors. There is a good possibility that at least one of those guys will be available in that 12 to 18 range. So looking at the Giants and what they have with draft picks, they've got 10 picks. I would be very surprised if the Giants use all 10 picks. And I say that because, look, they addressed receiver, like I said, and I know a lot of people are like, well, they're still going to add a receiver. I'm not so convinced they're going to do that in the first round or even in the second day of the draft. I think if they add another receiver, it'll be later on in the draft. I do think cornerback is the more pressing need since it wasn't really addressed. Receiver really kind of was, if you think about it, with the addition of Paris Campbell, with the re-signing of Darius Slayton to 2 years. Colin Johnson's coming back, as I've mentioned before. So I know some of you will disagree with me when I say this, but I don't think that receiver is as pressing a need as maybe it was at the start of this whole process. So that being said, if I'm not sitting and looking to get a receiver, I consider moving up with a team like the Steelers, if they're willing to trade down, to get me one of these top cornerbacks. Now, I'm not giving up my second round pick, obviously, because in the second round, come hell or high water, I want a center. And I know that's not the way to do it. I know you've got to go, best available at that point. But every mock draft scenario I've run, it's been a center. So I'm just speaking for myself here. But I would be willing, I think, to give up a third and maybe one of my 7th round picks, because there's 3 7th round picks, if it means moving up and getting me a stud cornerback, because I do think that is a big, big need for this team. Now, obviously, the drawback is if you give up a third, you got to wait like a long time in between picks, from that 2nd round pick to that first pick in to your first pick in the 4th round. I don't think the Giants will do that. I would be surprised. But again, depending on how they view the personnel that they've acquired, I can see them making a case to move up to get themselves a stud cornerback. I don't think you should sit there and be afraid or say to yourself, oh my God, if I move up, I'm going to have to give up, day 2 picks. I do believe that Joe Schoen probably doesn't want to give up day 2 picks. I think, after seeing how the Lions were able to move Jeff Okudah for a 5th-round pick, maybe the Giants try to, move one of their day 3 picks to move up, in addition to swapping places in the 1st round. Will they find a buyer? I don't know. I really don't. I mean, it's possible. If they can pull that off, even better. But I can definitely see a case for the Giants to move up if it means getting one of these stud cornerbacks, one of these top cornerbacks at the top of the value board. All right. Now, what's the case for moving down? Don't go anywhere. We'll talk about it right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you think you have what it takes to run your own draft, pick your own players, hire your own coaches, basically run a franchise from top to bottom, then you need to try Ultimate Football GM. This game is so much fun and so realistic. And best of all, it's free. You can compete against your friends as you decide who's going to be the ultimate GM, who's got the bragging rights, who can build a dynasty. Best of all, this game is completely free and you can play it offline anytime you want. And did I mention that listeners of the Locked On Giants podcast get a free boost to their franchise with the promo code Locked On? That's right. All you need to do is go to the app stores to download the app or visit ultimate-gm.com to download the game, sign up for an account, enter that promo code, which is Locked On in all caps, and get your free boost. What are you waiting for? Show the GMs how it's done. Download the game, start playing today, and build your dynasty. Hey, Giant fans, thanks for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen or watch every day. Now make your second listen or watch the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez provide in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects with deep dives into the sleepers and hidden gems that can change your favorite NFL franchise. Find Locked On NFL Draft wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Welcome back, Giant fans, to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Trainer, your host, and we're kind of making a case here. Move up or move down in the 1st round if you're the Giants. And I just got through trying to make an argument for moving up. Now I'm going to make an argument for moving down. And by the way, I do think the Giants are going to probably stay put at 25, but I'm just presenting a couple of different scenarios for you to consider. And you can tell me if you agree with them, if you like them, or if you think, just not going to happen. So let's talk about the possibility of moving down. Now, why would the Giants want to move down? Quite frankly, to get more draft picks. So if you're Joe Schoen and you feel that you have a lot more holes to fill, which this team does, but, depending on how Schoen views it, does he feel, for example, that he has enough at receiver? Does he feel that he has enough at linebacker? Is he happy with, his running back depth? Maybe now you don't need additional picks, hence why you can move up. But if he does feel like he needs more, then you want to get additional picks. And here's the thing, folks, the picks don't necessarily have to be this year, because here's the factor. The Giants in free agency right now will not have any comp picks next year. So If you are the Giants and you want to have extra comp picks or extra picks to play with in future drafts, maybe you swing a deal with somebody to where you pick up an extra draft or pick or two next year. It doesn't have to be this year again. You when you build a roster, you're looking at the long term. You're not just looking at this year. So if you're the Giants and you can find a team that maybe wants to trade back into the first round, or maybe a team who's a little lower down in the first round, they want to move up to 25, you have an opportunity now to pick up some extra draft picks, whether again it be this year or next year. Now, I personally would not want to see the Giants trade out of the first round, because if you do that, you give up that 50-year option on your draft pick. I would, however, be in favor of the Giants maybe moving down a few spots in the first round. I would have no problem with that if it means that they could pick up an extra draft pick or two this year and next year. Because again, based on their free agency activity this year, I am pretty sure the Giants right now do not project to get any comp picks. And Joe Schoen has proven that, the more picks, the better. So this way, if he wants to move around on the board, he can. But if you don't have what you need, then you're going to have an awfully hard time moving around. So that being said, if I'm the Giants, maybe the lowest I go, 29. If the teams below me are willing to do that. Now, just also keep in mind this. The Cowboys are right behind the Giants in the draft order. But according to a lot of mock drafts, the Cowboys will probably go for a tight end, which really isn't a huge need for the Giants, not after they picked up Darren Waller. So I'm not as concerned about the Cowboys, coming up and stealing a player, that the Giants might have their eye on, especially, if the Giants move down. So I am in favor, like I said, if you could swing a trade where you move down a few spots, still retain control of the number one, that first round pick with the 5th-year option, and you get an extra pick or two this year and next year, I say do it. Especially if you have a cluster of grades on this, on a group of players that is similar. And I could see the Giants maybe doing that scenario quicker than moving up. Now, if I were making the decision, what would I do? Well, sometimes I tend to be a little aggressive when it comes to personnel matters. And I would probably, if I'm Joe Schoen, if I could swing a deal that wouldn't cost me an arm and a leg to move up to where I could get myself a good cornerback, a really good cornerback, one of the top guys, I would look to move up. But not at the expense of, now I got to give up a 2nd round pick or, a 3rd round pick, even though that's what I proposed in my trade with Chris Carter. I think realistically, if I could get away with giving up, my 1st round pick, swapping 1st round picks and maybe a 4th and a 7th, I'd be fine with that. So overall, if I'm the Giants, I do think they're going to stay put, but trading up to me, here's the other advantage of trading up. You lessen the number of draft picks you have and hence the amount you have to pay for the rookie pool. If you trade back and you pick up more picks, and assuming all, not all those picks are, depending on where those picks are, like, if you have an extra pick or two this year and then one next year, now you're increasing your rookie pool. So finances do come into the equation. But again, the bottom line for Joe Schoen in making these decisions is he's got to look at each position unit on this team and say, okay, do I need to add more at these position units? And if you watch yesterday's show, I went through the various units and kind of went over each scenario where I think the Giants need to add more. To me, adding a premium quarterback is so important to where I would move up and I wouldn't think twice about it if I'm the Giants. I want the Giants to get quality cornerbacks. And look, I know they said they're going to have a competition with the guys they have right now, but these are the same guys that tried to fill in last year. They weren't horrible, but can we sit there and say that any of them were really standout guys? Let's consider this, folks. Last year on the cornerback group, only one cornerback, that being Rodarius Williams, came up with an interception. That's not going to cut it, folks. You need ball hawks back there. That's why I would be in favor of the Giants trading up to get one of these stud cornerbacks, one of these top cornerbacks. Again, it is deep, the class. They could probably wait until the second round, the third round, maybe even the fourth round. But the danger in waiting is there will be runs on positions. And I fully believe there will be a run on cornerbacks. We may even see it as soon as the first round. So don't wait. It's kind of like, it reminds me of when I go shopping with my husband, and he'll see something on the shelf that he wants, and he'll pick it up and he'll debate, should I buy it now or should I wait? And he'll put it back on the shelf. And I say to him, look, if you want it or if you need it, just get it, because you have no guarantee that it's going to be here next time you come back to the shelf. And that's happened a few times, actually. So, when it comes to roster building, you got to be aggressive. You can't sit back and be passive. And I do think that, again, I think the Giants will stay put. But if I had to pick which of the scenarios is going to happen, I think the Giants might consider trading up as opposed to trading back. All right, coming up next, I have some questions from you that I'm going to attempt to answer, so don't go anywhere. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And just a quick update, still waiting to hear from Tana and Dog regarding the live stream. I think it's going to be Thursday, but again, for those of you interested, just check the community tab on YouTube. I'll post it once I know for sure. I'll also tweet it out once I know when it's going to be. So as soon as I find something out, I'll definitely let you guys know. But I do know that we talked about, doing a live stream this week, and I'm hoping to, finalize that in time for you guys and gals to participate if you want to. So, all right, let's get into your questions. This question comes from Denise B over on the YouTube channel and the community channel. And she asked about the rookie pool necessary to sign the picks. So she goes, with the Giants having roughly $3 million available per spot rack in cap space and $10 million to sign our draft picks, do we have to make cuts or sign somebody? Denise, the answer is neither. And the reason for that is because according to Over the Cap, the Giants, even though they need $10.45 million for their rookie pool, they actually need $2.9 million in cap space to sign their picks. And the reason for that is we're talking effective cap space. So the formula, Denise, is you take the rookie pool amount minus $750,000 times the number of picks. And that's how you figure out how much the team actually needs to sign its draft class. Because what you're doing is in the top 51, you're replacing guys that are currently in the top 51 with your rookie class. The signing bonuses also do count towards the salary cap. But again, that's prorated. So you're really not talking a whole lot of money. So don't get me wrong, Denise, they will need to maybe clear a little bit more space. I'm not sure if that space is going to come from a Leonard Williams extension or a Dexter Lawrence extension. I'm not sure where it's going to happen, but somebody's going to have their contract redone at some point. Who, I don't know, but that's where I think that's headed. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let's go now to the phone and see what questions we have sitting in email. This one's from Kevin C. And this is in response to the mock draft I did over on Giants Country, which if you haven't checked it out, do check it out. I've got a little creative over there, even did a trade. So Kevin C writes, I think I think I like your choice of Emmanuel Forbes as the Giants' top pick in your latest mock. His slim frame, 166 pounds, is often mentioned as a reason for concern. From what you're hearing, does it seem reasonable to expect him to put on a few pounds without sacrificing mobility? Kevin, I mean, yeah. A lot of cornerbacks, especially the smaller cornerbacks, the thinner cornerbacks, they are slight of frame, but you can go into an NFL, weight and conditioning program, strength and conditioning program, and you can bulk up. Now, you don't want to get, huge. You don't want to turn into like a baby Hulk because that will slow you down. Now, I have not seen Forbes in person to say, oh, he definitely has room to add to his frame. But I would think, everybody has room to add. It's just a matter of how much how much room do they have? So tricky question, but I know a lot of people are concerned about, the size and everything like that, but just because a guy is on the light side doesn't mean that he's, a China doll that's going to snap the minute he takes a violent hit. So I don't know if I would worry too much about that, to be honest with you, Kevin. I mean, if you play smart and with good technique and everything like that, you should be able to hold up, I would think. So, all right, let's see. We have a question now from Pat L, who writes, I was looking at the mock 2023 NFL draft, and it seems like Bijan Robinson looks like he's projected to be picked near the bottom of the first round. His NFL comparable is Saquon Barkley. So I was wondering, if the Giants didn't make Saquon the second overall pick in the draft, where do you think he would have been picked? I guess you mean Saquon. Where do I think Saquon would have been picked? Probably would have been picked somewhere in the top 10, maybe the top half of the draft. Hard to say. I mean, you're talking going back to 2018, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember who picked where or who picked what outside of what the Giants did in that draft. So, that's kind of a hard question to answer. And then you also ask, if the second overall pick was not Saquon, who do you think it would have been? I can answer, Pat. I can tell you right now that even though I was saying it was going to be Saquon, basically because Gettleman kind of telegraphed it. I mean, he might as well have taken a billboard out in Times Square. It was that obvious it was going to be Saquon. But what I had wanted the Giants to do in that particular draft, I wanted them to trade down. And I wanted Quentin Nelson in that draft. I felt that while I understood the logic behind, taking a running back at the time, I thought it was short-sighted. And by that, I mean, the Giants, remember, they had Eli Manning as their quarterback. And I think what had happened at the time was that Eli was coming off 2 straight seasons where he threw for over 600 attempts. And he was getting up there in age. So I think the Giants wanted to take some of the onus off of him by getting him a running game. That was the logic behind Saquon. The problem with that is that it was short-sighted. All right. You probably could have gotten a running back later on in the draft. And if you really wanted to help Eli Manning out, you would have been better off getting him offensive linemen to protect him. And that's where I think the Giants, where they fell short in their thinking. I wanted Quentin Nelson in that draft. I'm not going to lie. I wanted them to trade down. I felt like they could trade down. They could get Quentin Nelson. They didn't. They got Saquon. I don't hate it that they got Saquon. I understand why they did it. I wouldn't have gone in that direction. So that's what I think the Giants would have done with the second round pick. It would have made more sense. Trade down. You would have picked up more picks. You could have done a whole lot more. And no, Gettleman fell full bloom in love with Saquon. And, the rest is history, as they say. So, all right. I think that is the last of our questions. Yes, it is. So just a couple questions. And remember, folks, if you want to get questions into me for the podcast, you can tweet them to me with the hashtag AskPTrain. You can send them to me on Instagram at Patty Traina, PATTITRAINA. You can email them to me. The email address is lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. Send them in. And when I have openings in the show, I will, I'll answer a few, because right now we don't have enough questions to do a full-blown mailbag, but certainly we have enough questions here and there to fill a segment up. And I want to keep up with the questions that you guys and gals ask. So feel free to send them in. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure you keep it here the rest of the week. And again, I will let you know on the message board if there's going to be a live show on Thursday. If there is, we'll start at 7:30, but just check the community tab on YouTube if you're interested in that. And if I can coordinate everything with Tana and Dog, we'll do a live show. And if I can't, I'll do something else for you. Never fear. I'm going to give you a couple more shows this week regardless. So, all right. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast. Till next time, everybody, have a good one.